Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Around the Payload. I am your host, Blevins, and we've got a star-studded, and I'd say this is another expert level episode here. We've got two champions over to my left, right? I can't tell. It's like podcast. It's like video left or right. I don't know, but we've got a nice episode here for you, and this is, man, it's sad to say, this is the last episode of the regular season for season one of Overwatch League. Man, it has been it has been a wild one, a wild experience for sure. But without further ado, let's start out and introduce the guest for you that we've got here today. To my upper, I'm just gonna say upper left. I don't know what it actually is. We've got Pesto Enthusiast, the founder of Junkertown Journal. Welcome back, sir.
Good to be back. And I should have a champion crown. I got robbed.
I can neither confirm nor deny that you were robbed because it's never rigged. To my upper right, we've A Smith, the host of Foul Play, and with the parentheses of Winston's over Omega Lull app. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. And Pesto definitely wasn't rigged because I beat you.
It was the tactical crouch that got you there. And to my bottom left, we've got the Monkey Prince, the meme extraordinaire, and person who posts literally every single thing that happens in the Overwatch community. Welcome back, sir.
Secretly psychic. That's all it is.
It's like he's creating the news, so he knows. And last but certainly not least, in my bottom right, we've got FOWL, Overwatch writer and analyst, and of course, my Batman to my Commissioner Gordon. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Our whole Discord chat history is literally just me flashing bat signals and him like 3 seconds later going, "Yep." So good. Always there when you need him. He's the hero that I need, but I do not deserve. But let's jump right into it. If you are a new viewer here, if you're familiar at all with ESPN's Around the Horn, this is definitely not the same show. It's certainly different enough to not have to stop doing it. But it is a game show. I put air quotes around it. It's a game show where I make up a bunch of points. We talk about stuff happening in the Overwatch League and Overwatch in general. I give out points, and at the end, a winner is crowned. That's what these perfectly photoshopped crowns next to A Smith. Yeah, artisanal, exactly. For sure. But let's move on in to round number one. Once this drop starts, which is sometime today.
Round one, capture the objective.
Sound drop was not working. Let's start it out here. So this is, like I mentioned before, this is the last week for the regular season for Overwatch League. And if you're familiar at all with traditional sports, this is what many would call garbage time. There's at least a handful of teams that have absolutely nothing to play for. They're not in either the stage or the season playoffs. They're just out there. Some teams are locked for both. So, Pesto, we'll start with you. Do you think that teams are going to be subbing out their starters for this last week of play and maybe playing some of the players we haven't seen yet?
No, I don't think so. I think if you're talking about people like Mendu Kusai or Numlocked who had zero play time.
Whoa, not zero. He got at least, he had a couple maps. Or one map.
Next to practically zero.
I'll give you that.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, the season playoffs are pretty much locked up. The seeding is pretty set. I would even say that the stage playoffs are pretty locked up at this point. So, I mean, putting people in doesn't really matter from a rankings perspective. The issue, though, is I just don't think that it's a good look. I mean, you're saying to these people, hey, we didn't find you that you were good enough to play when it actually mattered, but here are some games at the end. Be sure to play really well so that your trade value is marginally higher when we sell you. Okay, thanks, bye. I don't think that that's a good look. And for that reason, I don't think it's going to happen. And then for the small number of teams where the rest of the season still matters, I guess 6 teams where the rest of the season still matters, Any time that you are practicing with people that are not going to be actually playing in the playoffs is time that you are not practicing with the team that matters.
True.
I don't see it.
Gotcha. A lot of good points there. A. Smith, what are your thoughts? Are we going to see garbage time this week, or are we seeing full force?
Look, should we see garbage time? Absolutely. Will we? I'm not sold on that. I think you should. I think there's a reason it happens in sports, because those players deserve some playing time, period. They've been paid all this money. They're not getting paid this money to ride the bench the whole time and collect a paycheck. They want to play. I don't care if it's garbage time. I want to play. Anytime you get me out on that court, field, virtual field, whatever it is, map, anytime you get out there, that's your chance to shine, your chance to make the top 10 Reddit play, your chance to be the hero, and your chance to shine and make yourself more valuable for the team that will buy you next season and will start you next season. If I were them, I would do it. And for teams like the Valiant, who already have a top spot locked up, there's no reason. New York, they already have all this, which they're basically doing it anyway. It just makes too much sense to do it at this point. They don't even have to practice like a full regimented practice. If that's the case, just let them do whatever, because you're going to have a long time between for the playoffs to get ready and gear up. You're going to plot it for that team individually. You're going to be playing. You're not just going to be doing a regular practice. Yeah, I think you should. Definitely
some chances there. Volmil, what are you thinking?
So I kind of agree with a lot of what Pesto had to say, and to kind of double back on what A. Smith was saying. I think that you could reliably flex onto your bench, especially when garbage time is kind of happening. But I think this entire season we've kind of had at least one match day that's kind of been garbage time. Unfortunately, has been Shanghai, that you could probably just sub in your substitutes and have a potentially good game, and no teams really still have done that. So I think that there's still a lot of growth to be had in the management kind of side of things to really learn how to really integrate those teams, because I don't even know that people are practicing correctly with their starting roster. So trying to integrate those players into any kind of practice, even if it's like a B team style practice, I think is still trying to be figured out, unfortunately. But no, I don't think that you're going to see too many teams doing any kind of roster swapping. I think the only teams that could, probably NYXL or Valiant, like I said. They've got the spots cinched up, and I don't think they have a ton to play for. That's not to say they need to sandbag, but if teams are going to do it, I'd say that's them. But outside of that, I don't see anybody else really making any big moves.
Makes sense. TMP, last words here. Are we numb locked in or not?
I think New York and Valiant will sub out their starters. So New York's already been doing this. Onimo's had based 100% playtime last 2 weeks or so. So I think that will continue. And then the Valiant, which I want to talk about more. Like, they have a lot of good players on their bench. They got, we mentioned Numlock before, and then specifically I want to talk about Izayaki, who recently, Krusty said on Oversight, he personally thought that Izayaki is better, could be potentially a better player than Krieve. And I think last time they played against Shanghai, unfortunately Finzi and Izayaki were not able to play because they had not acquired their work pieces yet. And so you had this weird thing where they had to put in these two players because they do have that B team. So they've been playing with these two players this whole time, and all of a sudden you swap in a new off tank and main support, which is like really hurts team synergy. So I think Valiant, now that they've locked up the Pacific seed, they'll give enough more time for their B team. They're facing who are they facing? They're facing Shock and FOWL today or this week. So maybe not against Shock because they're a bit but I could see against maybe FOWL their last game, just like sub them in, see how they do. FOWL is definitely not a bad opponent, so you can see how they're doing against a stronger team, not necessarily like the strongest team, and just see how they do. No reason not to. You already got the spot.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see an argument on both ends of the spectrum there. I mean, I personally am hoping that I want to see some of these guys because, man, I just like, even though, like, yes, you're collecting a paycheck, it's got to stink because, like, you're basically, like, locked out of being able to do contenders, or you're locked out of being able to play. You're just there collecting a paycheck, which I'm sure maybe for some is fine, but I know a lot of those guys are very competitive, so that's got to stink. But let's move on here. Man, this is going to be the episode of finales, really. We're talking. We've talked about this before, but we've got stage playoff coming up this week. A lot of different teams in the mix. We've got both LA teams in the mix. We've got New York potentially not making it, but also very close to making it. We've got Dallas in the mix here. So A Smith, what teams are you seeing making the stage playoffs this stage?
Look here, guys. I'm gonna have to take the opportunity. I'm gonna have to take it. And first off, the first 3 teams are pretty much guaranteed here. Valiant is already guaranteed. Gladiator's already guaranteed.
Well, if they lose to Shanghai, they're not actually guaranteed.
Gladiators are 7-1. They're not guaranteed in the stage in the season playoffs. We're talking about stage playoffs, correct?
Yeah. Oh, maybe. Okay. We might
stage playoffs. They're 7.
Yeah, they're basically guaranteed.
So they are guaranteed. There's almost no chance of it happening. Very slim. So then you've got New York, which I think is basically going to lock it up.
It's a win.
Yeah, it's a win-1. So I got pretty. Even if they don't win one, they can still, in theory, they can lose one and still win on map differentials. So I really like New York's chances. That leaves the last slot between Dallas, Philly, and Houston. And by some outside miracle chance, San Francisco, it's not going to happen. Judging off the strength of schedules here, I like Dallas's chances best because they're playing Seoul Dynasty this week, and Seoul has looked like hot garbage. It's been bad. And I'm not even being a homer here. I just think really that FOWL has the opportunity here. Look, Philly plays they play Houston and they play London. Philly has not looked that good this stage. EQO has been broken at times this stage. They have had to sub in Shadowburn, and it's just kind of weird the way you've got good Philly, bad Philly. Houston, they have to play New York Excelsior. Unless New York Excelsior throws, I think New York's got that one locked up. Therefore, all you've got, Dallas has the map differentials, and let's just lay it out plain
all
clear.
Signs
Dallas is going to win.
Pointing all to time. Dallas from the guy wearing the Dallas FOWL Dallas FOWL hat. Makes a lot of sense. Volmel, are you on the Dallas FOWL train, or are you thinking something else here?
Do it.
I gotta say, A Smith, your team's got a great chance. They've looked fairly shaky at times, but their highs look really high. I think they came out swinging at the beginning of the stage. They showed what they had to offer. They kind of surprised people again. Mickie comes out. He was an ace on Diva back in the day. Now he's an ace on Brigitte. So I've got them kind of cinching up that 4th spot along with both LA teams and New York. I think, again, no surprise to anybody. I don't know. It's fairly cut and dry. I'm excited to see, California have such a big representation. I hope that obviously continues throughout the future because it's going to be a big hub for just not only just Overwatch esports, but esports in general. So that's always a good thing, but it's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah. California hub for esports. Boo. Let's get some Northeast representation. That's why I love Excelsior. But
that's
Monkey
right,
Prince, are you? No. Monkey Prince, are you in on the Dallas FOWL here, or are you drinking some other Kool-Aid?
Yeah, I agree. Valiant, Gladiators, New York, all pretty much locked up. New York, especially. I think the stage playoffs still matter to them. I mean, theoretically, they could continue sort of really sandbagging, but I think they still, at the very least, want to do good enough to get into stage playoffs. I think that does matter to them. And then, I said Dallas definitely the favorites coming into this, but I still give Philly the chances because they're so unpredictable. Like, you have no idea what's going to happen with Philly from one day to the next. So, like, I could see, them losing to Houston and losing to Spitfire. I could see them completely dominating them. I could see them losing one, winning the other. Like, so I give Philly maybe a 10-20% chance of making it in, just because that happened in stage 2 where we're all talking about playoff chances. It's Philly technically can make it, but we'll ignore them, and they ended up making it in. So anything can happen with Philly, but I think Dallas are definitely the favorites.
Man, we have not heard that line uttered in quite some time. Pesto, last words here. Are you also drinking this Dallas FOWL-aid?
I am not. As much as I have enjoyed watching the renaissance of Mickie, I think that Brigitte is a character perfectly tailored to his incredibly wanton aggression. But I think that if we look at the teams that are on the bubble, if we look at Philly, Houston, Dallas, if any one of those teams wins 2 matches, they get in. So I don't see that happening for Houston because they're going to get dismantled by NYXL. I also don't see that happening by FOWL because I think they're going to get dismantled by Valiant. So I think that Philly is the only team that has at least a decent shot of getting 2 wins. I think that neither win is by any means guaranteed, but I also have seen Carpe drag this team to victory way too many times just to say it's not going to happen. So I think a lot of it will wind up is EQO healthy and playing back on point. But I'm going to have to go with Philly.
Man, I definitely gave you some bonus points for what is likely going to be the episode title of Renaissance of Mickie. Love that one.
Wanton aggression? Come on, I want some +5 Scrabble words for that one.
I love wanton aggression as well, but after such a masterpiece of the Renaissance of Mickie, it's tough. It's a tough act to follow. Let's move on to the
dictionary.
Last question here of round 1 is going to kind of piggyback off of the stage playoffs. We've been kind of alluding to this for the whole season here, but we're finally gotten to it. The season playoffs. NYXL locked up. LA Valiant locked up. But Volmill, we'll start with you. Who else are we going to see in these end of season playoffs?
So I think majority of the standings so far. So if you look at the standings currently, you've got New York and Valiant obviously taking up their division slots as the top seeds. So I think they're obviously just shoo-ins. And then we've got Boston, London, Gladiators, Fusion, Houston. I think the teams basically on the lower end of that bubble is going to be Fusion and Houston. And they do actually play this week. So I think that's going to be a very big indicator on exactly which team makes it in. And I haven't done the math, but I think that match actually is a huge deal for either team, that those wins could put them over. And if Houston actually does win both of their games this week and Fusion goes 1-1, they would tie, I believe. No, they would go. Yeah. Okay, can't math.
It has to be an 0-2 and 2.
Yeah. And then they would still obviously win on map differential even through that tie. So it'll be really interesting. I think that that match in particular this week is going to really dictate how or exactly who is really making it to that season playoffs. But other than that, I think everybody else is kind of locked in. Boston could slip, but it doesn't seem that anybody else is really going to pick up that slack. I think they just fall down in seeding, and again, that really doesn't matter too terribly much, I don't think. But yeah, it seems like it's just going to be New York, LA, both LA teams, Boston, London, and if I had to guess, I'll probably say Philly.
Interesting. Monkey Prince, are you following the same logic, or are you is there any wild card that you're pulling for here?
Yeah, I think the 6 will be New York, Valiant, Boston, London, Gladiators, and Philadelphia. As I mentioned before, Philadelphia is super inconsistent, so Houston could potentially, bring it back and, or not bring it back, lose it all, throw. So you never know. So, but I think Philly is most likely to win. The interesting thing for me is seeding, because while Boston is guaranteed for the playoffs, they could they have a lower map differential than London. So if London has a good week, they have Mayhem. That should be a free win for them, basically. And they're actually facing Philly as well. So that could potentially decide, they could overtake Boston and mess up the seeding potentially.
Yeah, we talked about on High Noon Podcast that Philly versus London could actually decide everything. But Pesto, what are you thinking here? Is it going to be Philly in that last straggler spot or something else?
The way that I did the math, and I could be wrong, if you have 24 wins, you're guaranteed in, because 7th place is Houston, and Houston's on 21. So Boston is locked in. I don't see a scenario in which Gladiators doesn't get in because they have Shanghai. I don't see a scenario in which London doesn't get in. So it's really just down to, does Philly screw up? And considering that I am saying just previously that Philly was not going to screw up, that they were going to win both of their games, I'm going to double down on that and say that Philadelphia is in fact the 16th. Now, what I do want to say, though, and it's not part of the question, is that it really feels weird saying that London is going to be locked in, and that there's no, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, for the entire year, we've been talking about how London has been underperforming and how London is struggling and how London is not the team everyone expected. And yet they are a lock to make the playoffs, very likely in third, possibly in fourth. Either way, they're going to get $150,000 in performance bonuses and a guaranteed $50,000 minimum for the playoffs. So they're looking at $200,000 at the end of the year for a team that has been basically maligned the entire year. So I think we're starting to see some of these narratives collapse, maybe.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, we've seen such a huge paradigm shift for almost every single team, with the exception of basically NYXL. Almost every team has had a complete flip flop at some point or another. I mean, I guess you can count the last couple of weeks for NYXL, depending on if you buy into the conspiracy theory. But we'll talk about that later. A. Smith,
hold on a second. If you include the preseason, even NYXL
that's true.
Because everyone thought they were going to be the weakest all-Korean team.
Not me.
No one's expecting you to be this dominant at all.
Not you. Okay.
I will say
everyone except for the guy in an NYXL hat.
True.
And bare hands.
Bare hands too, who was feeding me information the whole time. He's like, this team's really good. Well, don't you work for shh. Okay. I put my money on the right horse in that race. But A. Smith, last words here. What are you thinking for these season playoffs? Cut and dry, or is there a wild card here?
I do think it's cut and dry. I think Philly is going. This literally all hinges on Houston. This could hinge on Houston, New York, and I don't like Houston's chances there. Even with New York throwing, they still went 3-2, or they still played Valiant 3-2, who is considered the best team in this stage. Just saying, like, even with them sandbagging, we're not playing as well, whatever we want to call it, it still looks like New York has the talent alone. As long as they try in the game, I think they're going to beat Houston. I think it's pretty much locked up. Now, I will say, during that whole thing, y'all were talking about teams that have been consistent. There is one team that has been the most consistent, and you lacked to mention the 0-40 team. The 0-40 team.
Bro,
they are
they're
the
0-38 right
now. No. Well, let's all
but
be
here's
real.
the
They're
thing.
0-40.
They were at the
They're already 0-40.
But here's
not
the thing.
Playoffs, the preseason.
That's true. Here's the thing, though, is that in the community power rankings we did, they were ranked at 6.
That's because nobody watches China.
Exactly.
Who watched China? Nobody.
Hexagrams is the only...
And bare hands, I think,
One
was
person.
China.
Yeah, hexagrams and bare hands are the only two people that watch the Chinese scene. But and they predicted. I don't want. Okay, I'm not going to spoil because hexagrams wanted his list to not be public, so I'm going to leave his anonymity up in the air here. But what he said on Overwatch League cast about his power rankings might have been a little bit different than what he submitted, is all I'm going to say. But that's going to bring us to the end of round number 1. And this might be the closest first round we've had thus far. We've got a two-way tie in third, fourth with Monkey Prince and A. Smith at 15 points a pop. We've got Volmil with 16 points, and heading up the front of the pack, we've got Pesto with that immaculate Renaissance of Mickie comment, getting him bonus points, putting him ahead with 17 points. But, as I like to say, still anyone's game. So let's move on in to round number 2.
Round 2. Capture the objective.
So let's talk about the World Cup a little bit. We've gotten a lot of insight from both the U.S. team, Canada team. I think a couple of the other teams have kind of talked about their process here. The U.S., the TLDR of how the U.S. is doing their team, they got 4 separate teams, each team named after one of the Mount Rushmore presidents, which I thought was kind of cool. You can check out the Bare Hands interview we did to get more insights onto that. But Monkey Prince, we'll start with you here. Is this the best method for the community to pick the Overwatch World Cup team?
I think it is. If you look at the players they selected, it's like I think that for the most part they're really good. We still don't know who one of the DPS, one of the main sports, one of the flex sports are. But like looking at the rest of them, they all look pretty solid. I mean, Bare Hands and Arrow are like they're really experienced. Obviously, Bare Hands worked on Excel. Arrow worked on Dallas Fuel, FU, FNGFE. So it's like I trust them to pick the best players for tryouts. So like, you know, I'm not like sure they could theoretically have had open tryouts, but with the amount of American players that would have been kind of ridiculous. And so I think choosing the best American players based on their judgment, and then having them internally scrim, see how they work as a team, see how they communicate. Like that's one of those important things in building a team is how well they work together. So I think this is a really good way of doing it.
For sure. Pesto, what are your thoughts on the Overwatch World Cup community tryouts that they had for the Team USA?
Did they pick the best people to try out? I'm going to say yes, question mark. I mean, with 4 people in every position, there's so much depth there that I actually think that it might be the opposite problem. I think that there might actually be too much depth, and I think that they might be giving people a shot that really don't have a realistic chance of getting on the team. The thing is, Team USA does not have to go through qualifiers, so they have a bit longer than everyone else to get their act in gear before matches start to matter. But I still feel that building around an existing core and then slotting in players is a better strategy than this sort of jumble everyone together, see if we have a team that fits. And I think that Arrow said he was going to swap people around in teams. It wasn't all locked in. Still, I think it's sort of more messy than it needs to be. So, for example, I don't understand why Sleepy and Moth are on 2 separate teams. I would put them on the same team, treat them as a core, treat them as a unit, and if you see someone else that justifies swapping them out, okay, you're going to start messing things around. But it's a mess. And the only thing I can think of for why you'd bring in this many people is that you're looking for intangibles. You're looking at things like communication or attitude or miscellaneous leadership stuff, and you're throwing a bunch of people in the room trying to find that, because if you're just looking at hero pool and mechanics, you don't need such a large tryout. I think the 24 people would be unnecessary just for...
Right, and Bare Hands mentioned a little bit in the interview that it's like, yeah, I mean, we're not just looking for people who can click heads, because like we have at this point we have enough tape on these people, right? Like if they can't do that, they probably shouldn't have gotten invited in the first place. But you bring up a good point, Pesto. It's definitely gonna try to find the intangibles there. A Smith, what are you thinking? Would you have done a similar tryout method that Bare Hands and Arrow came up with?
Yes and no. Here, in preparation for this question, I watched the movie Miracle on Ice. If you haven't seen that, it's an amazing movie. But what he essentially did was pulled all these players in, had a 1-day tryout. 1 day, he had to watch all the film on all these people. He knew exactly who could do what. All he was testing was who plays well, teamwork. And you can find that out pretty quickly. Just because they're on the same team in OWL doesn't mean that they're going to play the best with each other, if that makes sense. I don't think existing teamwork completely transfers over, because as we've seen when OWL first started, it didn't necessarily transfer over as much as we would have liked to have think it would. Some people just have a better bond and click better right off the bat. It's a very real thing. Like, sometimes you're like, oh, I really like this guy's shot calling. I didn't know shot calling sounded like this because I've been playing with this guy the whole time, but I like this better. So that's a legitimate possibility here, and you're starting to find out who exactly knows what. I think there are a few people that got left off, and we don't actually have the exact full rosters here, but I think like a DPS player like Nero or Buds or Dalton, I think all 3 of those guys really had a shot at making the team because USA's DPS talent, because from everything we know, Jake is not going, and then Seagull has not been announced. Therefore, I'm venturing to say that he's not going to be either. He's probably just going to be streaming and taking it easy. So with 2 of your better DPS talents out of the option, then you're kind of left with a whole different conundrum. And I think that's where you're really working on it, because I do think they know who their tanks are going to be. I think they know who their supports are going to be. I think they already have a good indication. I do think this part of this was hey, we have to fill out the entire team here. And if you, in some players, they legitimately deserve a shot. At least they feel like they got a shot at it, and then they know they lost. I'd rather feel like I had a shot than how I'm an owl and I never even got a tryout. What is this?
Do you think that we could fast track a U.S. citizenship for Jonak and then just wrap him in an American flag and see if that works?
Look, I'm friends with a specific representative for the country here in U.S. of A, and I think I can get things done. Just let me know.
Or just get him
American.
like a gigantic like Uncle Sam hat.
Yep,
No one will ask any
Bare hands,
questions.
DM me. I'll get you hooked up.
Valma, last words here. What do you like this system that they have devised? Would you have done something different? What are your thoughts?
No, I like it a lot. Again, to kind of touch on what Pesto said, I love the point that you are fishing for intangibles. You are looking for outside teamwork to improve on a core, and they do have quite a deep core. That there are a few cores that they could work with. They could work with kind of a Houston core. They could really just kind of throw San Francisco with a few other pieces and run with that. And I think when you shuffle people up, you kind of put them in a corner and say, look, your back's against the wall. You have this chance if it were, what could you show if your team isn't with you that you've been practicing with? Right. So what kind of mentality do you have then? Is it different than what you show normally? I think it actually shakes up a lot. You could still then again and still run with a core at the end of the day, but it's always good to kind of just throw the players a curveball, see what they have in store, and go with it. And I think that they've done a pretty good job at that. I other than the fact of the Mount Rushmore thing, I think that was a little patriotic, I would say. But
they got
patriotic is awesome. We're America.
America. It's the World Cup, man. Come on, you see?
Who are you, Volamel? What is this?
Back here?
Team USA.
Get him out of here. That's man.
I'll take the minus points.
Yeah, that's a snap. I'll only minus you one. The one thing I'll add to this is it might actually be a detriment in some ways to have people who are on the same team coming in with people who aren't on the same team, because it can almost like create like a clique, like depending on the players. I don't know Sleepy and Moth personally, but I know just from like playing other sports that like if you have two players that are on a team, like they click together and then it almost like segregates everyone else out of that clique, and it could be negative. So that may be something to consider for sure. But let's move on here. This question, actually, credit where credit's due. This one came from Pesto, and I really like this question a lot. This was a really good one here. And we'll actually start with you, Pesto, on your own question here. So Blizzard obviously has invested a lot of time, money, effort, etc. into Overwatch League. Huge marketing push and whatnot for this first season. But that season is quickly coming to an end here. So the question here is, what does Blizzard have to do during this quite long off season to keep the momentum up, to keep people engaged, and even grow their audience for season 2?
So I want to start off by saying that right now there's something like 1.2, 1.4, 1.5 million people who are watching a Fortnite tournament. So there are obviously big things on the horizon in esports, and if Blizzard does not keep up momentum, I think that they will potentially not be able to start the next season with the user base they have now. I think that there's a couple of components that need to happen. The first is we need tournaments, and we need tournaments with Overwatch League teams up against solid competition. So maybe have an invitational with some of the best Korean contenders teams and some Overwatch League teams and some American and European contenders teams. Throw them all in a LAN environment. Have a big tournament. In the World Cup, I fully expect that every player on every national team that is part of FOWL, you will hear that they're a part of FOWL multiple times, and the casters will be instructed to harp on that, so that people say, because the Overwatch League has less viewership than the World Cup, because the World Cup is also pulling in the BlizzCon people. So they want to transfer that population over. So there's going to be a lot of crossover. The next thing I would say is gossip. And by gossip, I mean the roster moves, because you see in things like the NFL offseason and the NBA offseason, when there's not playing, there's still lots of conversation about roster moves. I think that the roster moves need to start immediately and keep going all
That's
the way
what we'll
through.
be talking about.
Yep. And then lastly, I mean, all of these teams need to go back to their home cities, have lots of events. You have community licenses. You better use them all. The players need to be around. I understand that they're going to need breaks. They're going to have the World Cup. They're going to need to fit vacations and all this. But you need to start building your fan bases, because when the show starts traveling in season 3, you're going to need to fill out these stadiums, and that means local fans. So I think you can do it. I think that we're not looking at the Battle Royale apocalypse stealing all the viewers from everything else, but it's going to take a lot more work than I think Blizzard has been willing to do in the past.
Yeah, I agree with you there. If Blizzard does the same stuff that they did for the beginning of season 1, we might be in for a train wreck at the start of season 2. A. Smith, what are your thoughts here on the off season for Overwatch League?
Look, I've got a really good idea, and nobody has. I've not heard anybody say this before, but this is something that soccer does, and it's international friendlies, and you stream it on the Overwatch League channel. How cool would that be to see teams like USA versus another team, and it's just a friendly, it's an international friendly, and it's like a whatever, I mean, like a exhibition type match, but things like that would be really, really good. Another thing that needs to happen is Seagull needs to start streaming. Seagull gets his stream up, boost it, people are gonna watch. 100%. Teams need to go back, need to start to get acclimated with their city, have fan events. The more fan events, the better. And I'm not even completely sold that tournaments have to happen. I do think players need off season, and the players do need rest. I think being plugged in too long, it's possible you just burn out really quickly because you're just hooked in all this time. There's a reason that there's so many games and people are talking about burnout, and then you have this off season. There's a reason every sport has an off season. It's so people can chill. So that needs to happen, but 100% it's going to be rumors. XQC needs to do some like drama stuff. We're going to get some drama in there. No. I'm serious. If you get some XQC drama in, it's going to make Blizzard, it's going to get the Overwatch League in people's ears. The more times that you hear Overwatch League, the more times you hear Overwatch League players, you're going to start thinking, oh, I need to catch that. That's cool. Oh my gosh, how crazy is different things happening? You want to see stuff. You're going to plug in to see it, and the more these players stream, the more that you hear, the more they grow their individual fan base, the more that the league fan base is going to grow. Players need to grow their brands.
I mean, I definitely agree with you there, as much as I don't necessarily want to see the Overwatch tabloids happen again. We've already gone through enough of that. But Valmil, what do you
TMZ?
Oh yeah, God. Valmil, what are you thinking here for the off season for OWL?
I've got a couple things that are kind of interesting, and I do like A. Smith's point where he mentions that the players do need a break, and I completely agree. But when we're looking at some of the big criticisms that Overwatch League has had, and it has been, the activation of those viewers. Blizzard touts that we have 40 million players playing the game, but we can't maintain about 100,000 viewers on their multi-million-dollar broadcast. I think that's a place where we could grow, definitely. And I think one way we do that is we take a page out of Fortnite's book, and let's make an Overwatch Pro-Am. Let's get some people involved and pair them up with some teams and see what happens. I think that's a great way to get more eyes on this, especially when you're bringing in a player like Ninja, any kind of mainstream celebrity, a traditional sports star. Get those people involved. I want to see Shaq pair up with the San Francisco Shock. Like, how cool would that be? Get A-Rod. I mean, who wouldn't kill to see Jennifer Lopez play Overwatch? I think that would be
I want to see Uncle
insane.
Drew play Overwatch.
Sure. any form of that is going to drive viewership up no matter what. And it's just getting eyes on Overwatch. And then from that, it bleeds over into the Overwatch League. And in a similar vein, I think, another big kind of factor that Blizzard needs to take into account is, there's been a big outcry on fixing the ladder and making it a little bit more entertaining, whether that's adding roll queue. I think that's a big way to get people back to streaming the game, and again, getting more eyes on Overwatch. Because when you look at and it's not to say that Twitch is like the end all be all, but when you look at that as a small metric, it's not doing as hot if it's not kind of propped by the back of Overwatch League. That and probably continue Watchpoint. I think that's been a great way to kind of continue with the news, similar to the vein of like the ESPN, even though, they can't necessarily dictate all of their time to the Overwatch League. I think Watchpoint can, and they could act as a kind of news source throughout the off season and create a lot of hype. So I think there's many of other things, but to kind of keep it brief, I think those are some of my big ones.
Yeah, a lot of good ideas there. I mean, I'd love to see. I would love to see like a. Well, I'm not going to go too much into it. I'm just a lowly host. Monkey Prince, last words here. What do you think for Overwatch League off season?
100% agree that you need to focus on like just keeping the player base first. So a lot of people, as you said, like a lot of people have expressed frustration with the ladder system and just overall imbalance and tons of these things. So your first step should be fixing that, getting people to more happy with the game. Because the more players you have, the more people you have to pull from. And then in terms of like tournaments and like things like that, I don't think you need anything extra than what you have now. Playoffs are in July 27th, and then group stages for World Cup are August, October. Then you got obviously BlizzCon November. You got preseason starting in December if it follows the same format, and then the next Overwatch season's there. So Overwatch League season's there. So I think that's fine in terms of like scheduling, keeping people occupied. I think one thing I really like to see is more promotion of contenders, because I think like if you need to have a sustainable tier 2 scene in order to have the tier 1 scene. And so like just host like on the Overwatch League channel, you have 1 million something followers on that channel. Just host the contender stream there. That would definitely get more people watching that. And I definitely do think fan events and player streaming is important. Like a lot of the way people discover it is through people's streams. Like I'm sure there's a large chunk of Overwatch League who they saw that they were fans of Seagull, and then he joined Dallas Fuel, and that's how they found out, or were fans of some other streamer. So I think that's the big thing. So first fix the game. Honestly, not fix the game. The game's not broken, but fix the issues the game has, and do that, and then just focus on expanding. Just continue what you're doing. And one thing I wanted to bring up is that people saying how like the first season wasn't marketed a lot. I think that was intentional, because if you look at the course of the season, they changed tons of stuff. They changed the stage layout format. They changed how the maps are done. They changed so much stuff. And so I think this first year was sort of like, we're going to have like a test of it and like fix all the issues it has. It's like the core fan base that's going to have it. And then, season 2, season 3, when they go to home teams, they're going to market it way more now that they fixed a lot of the issues that they've had.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. My initial thesis for it was, first season is make sure you're converting your Overwatch esports fans, the people like us who have been watching since before there was Overwatch esports. Get those people, and then start to get the Overwatch players as well. And then next season, I think, will be more, let's get people who are into gaming and into esports at a more macro level than just Overwatch, convert them into Overwatch League fans. And then season 3, when we're local, when we're traveling, get the way I always refer to them as muggles, get the muggles, people who aren't who don't know anything about gaming, traditional sports fans, or people who just aren't, your grandma, convert those people. So I think it's probably, I have no basis to this other than it kind of made some of the things that they've done so far have made sense in that lineage. But I don't know. I think that's kind of what we'll end up seeing. But that's fair.
I'm doing my part, okay? I'm getting my sister hooked on Overwatch League, so I'm just saying, everybody needs to be doing their part. If you're not getting your family members hooked, you're not doing your part. This is on you too.
It's true. Tell your friends who are almost certainly watching, one of the 1.50 million people watching this Fortnite tournament right now. I have nothing against Fortnite. Let's move on to the last question here in round number 2. One of the, if not the biggest disappointment coming in from Overwatch League, from before Overwatch League and their performance in Overwatch League Season 1, has been the Seoul Dynasty. Touted as arguably the most one arguably the most accomplished Overwatch League or most accomplished Overwatch team pre-Overwatch was Lunatic High. They basically ported directly over into Seoul Dynasty. And they have yet to win a yes, F's in the chat, please. They've yet to make it to a stage playoff, now confirmed as they're, I believe they're 100% out of this stage. And they're not making the season playoffs. I think that's we can go back. This is the time now where we go back in time and tell everyone to check off their bingo card of things you didn't predict were going to happen in the preseason that did happen. Seoul flopped completely. So the question here is, A. Smith, what is Seoul going to do in this offseason going into Season 2? Are they going to change their team up? Are they going to bootstrap everything? What are you thinking?
Yeah. I know this isn't the buy or sell round, but you know what they're doing? They're sell, 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 sell. Dude, just restart your team. First, you got to start with your coaches. The coaches have failed this team. Much like in Arrow, you have failed this city. The coaches have failed this team. Anyways, you've got to start with a new coaching staff. I think this coaching staff just didn't understand how the league works, and you've got to bring in some fresh face, some fresh eyes, get some new things. I think you've got a lot of talent still on this team. You still got to build around that. I think right now, you get rid of somebody like Kuki and Guido, who hasn't really produced anything, and you bring in like a main tank that, has a chance to rival Miro. I think you need to get Miro back on the starting path. I think Miro has a lot of talent, and he was just untapped potential. I think there's problems there. Jae Hong, Toby, these are all great players. You can still make it happen. Fleta, great player. Even good old Munch. I mean, come on, man. Good old Munch, he's still a really good player. This has a lot more to do with the inadequacies of the coaching staff than the players themselves. Yes, there are players I think you need to switch off and get more better talent because it's available. But I also think the coaching staff starts here, and they have to get their lineups right. If they were just throwing lineups against the wall and seeing what's stuck, and guess what? Now you're out of the playoffs.
Jae Hong, main tank, does not equal success. Confirmed. So A. Smith is touting the sell for the Seoul Dynasty here. Volmil, what are your thoughts for Seoul for going into Season 2?
Well, there's a lot here, so I'll try to be brief. I like Miro. I've been a Lunatic High fan since the beginning. I think he's got to go. I think he's a known quantity at this point. We look at the golden days. We want to remember him fondly, and I think it's time we give him a warrior's burial, and we ship him out to sea and burn the ship, unfortunately.
Jesus.
Next on the docket, like you said, coaching staff. It felt like we were playing coaching staff roulette, where a coach played head coach for a week and decided they were going to, change up the roster and put Jae Hong. There's numerous reasons why the coaching staff definitely was just all over the place. I think you need to either restructure this coaching staff so that there's a very clear hierarchy, or you need somebody to come in, kind of clean house, and really funnel down who's really making the key decisions here, and just kind of trim the fat, if you were. Next, Guido, Zephyr probably are gone. They really haven't seen much play time outside of just, again, coach roulette. I would sell Kuki for me personally. I think he actually has a lot of value as the main tank, and he speaks English quite fluently. So I think he could go to an expansion team, another Overwatch League franchise. I think he's a sell. And then potential roster additions. Well, I guess we'll touch on Jae Hong. I think Jae Hong has a big personality in this team. I think he actually has quite a bit of clout in this team. So I think you keep him on board. As much as I've been a little bit critical of him, he's brought it back around. He's very flexible. Keep him on as a flex. But I'm looking at Geguri, Gamsu, No Smite, and So What from the contenders regions in China and Korea. I'm looking at Lucid. I'm looking at Hagopyun from London as all replacements or potential replacements, and to kind of bolster Seoul for next season, because they've got to make some changes.
A lot of really good points there. Monkey Prince, what are you thinking? What's Seoul going to do in this offseason?
I think you have to start with changing the coaching staff, and I think you change the coaching staff before you make any roster decisions. I think you get that new coach, maybe have your coaches go off to some other teams, and just let that new coach evaluate your team. See maybe players aren't as bad as we think they are. It's just been the coaching staff. So sit down with them, see what potential they have for next season, and then make a decision based off of that. If I'm looking at the roster, I think, so you keep Zumba, Jaehong, like you basically you keep all the you think like you take if I can speak clearly, take Zumba, Jaehong, Toby, probably Fleta, Munchkin, and then maybe Gambler. You probably keep Gambler, and then you think about this. They're Seoul Dynasty, right? They're the only Korean team right now. Even if there's other Korean teams added next season, they have said that they will be the only Seoul team. So they can basically have a pretty sweet deal to offer to any Korean contenders player. They're all basically in Seoul right now. If you want to stay there, potentially in the future, they just have a really easy job at convincing people to join their team. So go to contenders, get Godspeed, get No Smite, get Jexy, get all these great players from contenders, and just do it that way. You could potentially get some other Koreans from other teams, but I think getting young talent has proven to be a very good strategy in the league. So I think just getting your new coach, getting young talent to pair with that coach, pair them along with some veterans like Jaehong or Zumba, sort of like leadership roles within the team, and you'll have a really strong Seoul coming into season 2.
Yeah, man, I just couldn't help thinking when you said sit all the players down, just like sitting Miro down on a boat that you're about to light on fire, as Volmill suggested. But Pesto, last words here. What's Seoul going to do in this offseason going into season number 2?
I mean, I think a lot of the good points have already been taken. Yes, the coaching situation desperately needs to be sorted out. I think that they have a problem in that there's going to be a bunch of teams that all need really good coaches, including probably London, certainly Mayhem, probably Shanghai is also going to be looking for a coach. So I think that there's probably more suitors than there is top talent. So that's going to be a problem. After that, yes, the main tank situation, probably the highest priority. One of Kuki or Miro has to go. The other one is going to be the bench player looking to reclaim their spot. Figuring out what to do with Ryu Jaehong is another problem. I've heard he's not the shot caller, but considering that they're willing to put him in main tank just to keep him on the active roster, I don't think there's any way he's going to get removed from the team. But unless there is a shift in the meta or he picks up some more heroes, using him is sort of tricky. Then it gets to who are you going to pair up with Fleta, because I don't see any situation in which they get rid of Fleta, and I don't think that Wikid and Munchkin. I think both Wikid and Munchkin are OWL caliber players, but I don't think that either of them is the right pairing for Fleta. And then lastly, the one thing that hasn't been covered is reset. Losing like this, failing the expectations, failing the Korean fans, which are vociferous, is mentally fatiguing. Props to them for not having a breakdown like FOWL did. But still, you can see from some of these tweets, you can see from Jaehong saying, I'm not sure if I'm even going to be on the team next year, that they are mentally fatigued. And you cannot go into the new season like that. There has to be a reset. They have to reclaim the hunger that they came into Apex Season 1 with and put all of this first season out of their mind. Otherwise, they're just going to start from 3 steps behind everyone else.
Right. Maybe they do need to have that complete breakdown like FOWL did, because from the ashes of the Dallas FOWL fire comes the renaissance of Mickie. Man, I can't. You didn't say Dallas. Yeah, man, I just can't. I can't get enough of that.
You need the Dark Ages before you get the Renaissance.
Exactly. And it seems like Seoul has just been kind of treading water. So that's going to bring us to the end of round number 2. We are quickly running out of time here, so we're going to whip through this last round real quick here. But first, the score recap. We've got A. Smith rounding out the pack at 39 points, Monkey Prince with 40, Volmill with 42 points, and Pesto just pulling ahead here with 45 points. The renaissance of Pesto, if anything else. But let's move on to round number 3.
The payload is approaching its destination.
Round 3, of course, is the buy or sell round. Buys agree, sells disagree if you have not listened in before. So Let's start it off here. Valmel, there's been a lot of talk about the New York Excelsior and sandbagging or throwing, whatever you want to call it. So buy or sell, or buy or sell that the NYXL has been actually sandbagging or throwing.
I think by definition it is kind of like a buy in a sense, because we've talked about this before, where this league is kind of stressful for these players. I think they all came into this, they kind of looked at it, we're like, oh yeah, we could probably do this. And then you start to hit week 5 and you're like, man, I could really use a vacation. Hawaii sounds fabulous right now. So you're really looking at, trying to give these players a break, especially when you don't really need this at all. When you're in New York, when you have that big of a delta that New York has, I really don't think you need to try too terribly hard. I think you could just win on brute force. And you can really kind of finagle in players that, do need a break and rotate in people that don't necessarily have a ton of play time. So yeah, I'm buying. It is kind of just bad, but it is what it is.
Makes sense. Monkey Prince, buy or sell. NYXL has been throwing these past couple of weeks.
Maybe not throwing, sorry, or probably sandbagging is more accurate, just because they're playing Animo over Arc. I think that just definitionally, if you're trying your best, you would be playing Arc, not Animo. And you just look at Spider Pine and all the instances, and just they're not trying their hardest, and honestly, who can blame them? Your first seed, if anything, it's a disadvantage. If you're doing all these complicated counter strats and trying your hardest, then you're just giving away things you could use in the playoffs. So, it is honestly just the smartest thing to do once you're in that position. I think they tried this week. They try enough to win the games again to playoffs. But besides that, they're not going to be playing their A game.
Makes sense. Pesto, what are you thinking? Buy or sell? NYXL has been sandbagging.
I am going to buy it. I think if you look at the 2 losses, you are looking at 2 teams that they could realistically face in the playoffs. So it makes sense that they were sort of not going at 100%, that they were resting and holding strategies back. The thing, though, is they need to crush this week. They cannot go into the playoffs shaky. They need to have... I think if for confidence, if for no other reason, they need to crush this week. But I also think that we might actually be underestimating how much the meta shift has affected them, because yes, all of these players are amazing, and Sabiolbe has taken to the Widow really well. But this is a team that, as much as we think about it being built over Jonak doing crazy Jonak things, was also built around Sabiolbe's Tracer, and now Tracer is sort of a C-tier hero. And there is a possibility that the reason why they are sort of phoning it in like this is because they are trying to figure out a top-tier strategy that does not involve that Tracer. So I think they need to crush it now, get their confidence in high. I think that part of it is sandbagging, but I think that there might legitimately be a part of it where they are trying to adjust, and it's a little harder than anticipated.
Interesting. See, Thornrain, that's how you do a soft buy. You don't say soft buy. Or what did Thornrain try to? He tried to rent or something. I don't know.
He rented.
He rented. Just pick buy or sell, and then if you want to be wishy-washy, do it in the explanation. Pesto knows what's up. Big Kef throwing it. He's not even in the game. A Smith, last words here. Buy or sell.
To mortgage?
And...
No.
I'm selling that. I'm
foreclosing, actually.
You buying or selling this, A Smith?
I am 100%. I'm actually going to sell this. I am not buying the notion that they're sandbagging. The definition of sandbagging, let me read this.
Oh, God.
I'm
selling
deliberately
this.
underperform in a race to gain an unfair advantage. Right here.
Okay, we believe you.
Okay. Regardless, here's the deal. I don't think they're gaining an unfair advantage. Here's the problem here is there's going to be a new meta come playoffs. So what advantage are they getting? Because they're going to have to build new strats completely. They're just playing the league how the league should be played. You need to rest players, period. There needs to be times in league play where you rest players. If you have not seen any other sports league, minus the NFL, which has half the games that Overwatch does,
and a bye week.
Yes, and a bye week. They have literally significantly less games than Overwatch does. Any game that has close to this, every sport rests their players. Does it mean they're throwing? Does it mean they're sandbagging? No, it means they're resting their players and they're giving some of their players a chance to breathe, because that needs to happen every once in a while. You can't have somebody going 100% every single time. every single sport does it. You're doing the things the right way, and let's be real, the right way, that's why they're winning. They've been doing this the right way where every other team has not been. They're not sandbagging to gain an unfair advantage because I don't think they're gaining. The only advantage they're gaining is rest and mental health, which is a good thing. And I don't think it's unfair. I think it's completely accurate.
Does Spider-Pine count as rest?
Sending Pine back to Korea.
Oh man, that's Monkey Prince with the that's worth a bonus point for sure. But this is actually going to bring us in for time reasons. This is going to end up being our last question, and it's kind of like a meme question even in and of itself, even though it's kind of serious too. So we've seen XQC back in the competitive realm. He played with Goats, I believe, in one of the events, and with XQC back being more than just a streamer, obviously still streaming too, but playing in a competitive scene. Monkey Prince, we'll start with you. Buy or sell? Ever seeing XQC back in the Overwatch League?
Buy. I definitely buy this. He's a great main tank. Maintain is probably the position with the least amount of people, like the amount of a player pool to pull from. So like if you have a player as good as XQC, you want to pick him up. Like, I mean, obviously, if you are a team going at him, you probably have to make it very clear when you're signing him. Hey, you to chill it out a bit on the screen. To take it down a couple notches. But like, I think he definitely wants to compete. If you've seen him stream his games in Contenders Trials, he seems to act as a really good teammate. So I think he definitely wants to come back. He's going to be playing for Team Canada. But I definitely think we'll see him.
Interesting. Pesto, buying or selling XQC ever being back in Overwatch League?
When I prepared for this question, I had sell because I did not realize you were going to use the word ever. So I would almost certainly sell for Season 2.
Okay.
But for the rest of time, I would say there is more of a possibility. But I was surprised he got picked up in Season 1. I said before he got picked up that I didn't think it would happen. Is he a skilled player? Absolutely. There's no question about that. The problem is, and this is coming from someone who's faced the same problems before, he doesn't have a great filter. And the Overwatch League, Blizzard has a vision of sort of a PG-13 level league. Yes, you've got shooting, but it's not a gory game. I think that you saw how much chaos his suspensions threw into Dallas Fuel. I think that teams that are coming in are going to look at it and say, I need to see more tape of him being, I don't want to say mature enough, but being politically correct enough, professional enough, being able to present himself in a way that will not scare away the advertisers, because realistically that is what is motivating Overwatch League to be this way. But I think that next season is probably too soon, just like the person who if I say his name, I will lose points. I think that person, Season 1 would have been too soon, but if he shows up next season, maybe that's something that will happen. I think that when you burn out that publicly, there needs to be more time than just a couple of months before you get put back into that environment.
Man,
I also think that if he does get picked up, that you need to have someone in the background to help him blow out steam, because part of the reason he got to the situation where he did is because he fed off of his community, his streaming community liked the mania, and he needs an outlet for that is not his stream, or he's going to burn out again.
So what you're saying is the Dallas, whatever team he ends up playing for would need an actual human punching bag for professional punching
or a personal
bag. Right here. I can take it all. Boom. I'm in. I'm ready. Just have XQC just like start wailing on me. He probably weighs like $130 soaking wet, so I'm not worried about it. He can punch me as hard as he wants. Don't care. A Smith, buy or sell? Obviously, XQC hits pretty close to your home in the Dallas Fuel. Buy or sell? XQC ever coming back?
Look, I'm going to sell it because he likes the juice, okay? He likes the juice, all right? He is not there, dude. He is not. Stop with our romanticized vision of XQC. Even when he was playing with Dallas, he wasn't that great. Okay, the only time that we saw him really, really good has been, I think, Team Canada. That was his best performance overall. I don't think he was even quite as good with like Denial or what some of these other teams.
Arc 6.
Yeah, Arc 6. He's not been like that good of a player. Honestly, everyone sees him. He's dominant in ranked. Great. Rank does not always transfer over. Stop it. We have a romanticized vision of who we want XQC to be, and he is not that person. Don't force something on somebody that they're not. I think there are too many other good tanks out there that are viable options to fill 28 teams if need be, and XQC is not one of the top 28 tanks in the league. I don't think he's one of the top 56 tanks in the league.
Man, the biting words almost as brutal as Volmil calling for Miro to be Warriors burial. It's still brutal, regardless of whether it's respectful or not. But Volmil, you got the last words here. Buying or selling, XQC coming back to the league.
I'm selling, but for a kind of different reason. I think that when Felix kind of looks at this, you know, he's had a taste of it. I don't know that he's necessarily interested in coming back and dealing with the PR and kind of censoring himself. I think he's kind of a free bird. He wants to do what he wants to do, and I don't think he likes having somebody breathe down in his neck and kind of almost hunt for him. Because, you know, when we look at his kind of drama in his history, you know, within the Overwatch League, I think there is I wouldn't say evidence to say, but there you do have to speculate, you know, if Blizzard even really wanted him in and were looking to kind of throw the book at him and really kind of put him on a very, very tight leash. And he strayed, and they kind of axed him, and that's not their fault, and that's, you know, I can't blame them, but I think they're mutually parted, and I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think he's really that interested, and just let him be free. I think he's fine streaming, and I'm sure he'll be very successful elsewhere.
For sure, definitely.
He wants the juice. Everybody knows that he likes juice.
He likes
Well,
the
here's the
juice.
thing. I mean, he will probably be making more money than some Overwatch League players. And if he is able to transition games, he will have a longer career than probably most of the people in this league. Being a very successful streamer is lucrative.
And it's good for Overwatch.
Sure.
It's good for Overwatch.
For sure. I definitely don't I don't disagree with any of the points that you guys made. But that's going to bring us to the end here. Time for the final cut here. We had a really, really close one. We had A. Smith and Volmil leading out the back of the pack here with 53 points a pop, which means the final round is coming here. The Monkey Prince versus Pesto Enthusiast. And I don't know if you guys caught it, but we changed up the final rules a little bit here so that I am not in complete and utter power. So we're going to ask the question here. There can only be one winner, but the two non-finalists get to cast a vote. A. Smith and Volmil are going to be able to cast their vote to see who they think is going to win this one. And if a tiebreaker needs to happen, that's where I come in and hand out the W. But let's move in here. It is going to be Pesto versus Monkey Prince here. And the random throw of a coin, which I definitely didn't lose and have already thrown, is going to show that Monkey Prince is going to go first here. And the question here is, what is the biggest surprise to you for Season 1? Monkey Prince, you're on the clock.
Personally, I think it has to be Seoul, because even like looking at some of the other teams have underperformed, like Dallas, like that. I still heard people like initially like, oh, Dallas was performing in an A for a while, so they might, you know, we haven't seen them against other competition. Like I don't think, and so like I think Seoul is the most surprising. Like you look at them coming in, it's like, oh my god, you know, they took the tanks and supports Moonchikai, which are, you know, those are the strongest parts of the team, and then they add in Fleta, who's apparently this god who's on this horrible team, and Munchkin and Wahid, and you know all these other parts, and you know they're gonna look at all these coaches they have. They got this coach Jisoo Basan who just won Apex Season 4. You know they got the coaches from Moonchikai. They got all these great things going for them, and then they just didn't. That never materialized. You know, at first, and the saddest thing was that it was a slow decline. You know, at first you're like, oh, they're doing pretty well. You know, okay, they didn't make stage playoffs. You know, maybe they'll do better next stage. Oh, they didn't make it this stage, and they didn't sign anyone. Well, maybe. Oh, now Jaehong's on main tank. Well, that's not great. Oh, they're putting Zephyr and Guido, and all this stuff is happening. And it's like, it was just kind of sad to see this team that, you know, was so great, and we came with such high expectations. We, you know, the best tanks, the best supports, the best DPS are all going to make this, you know, this incredible team, and that just never happened.
Definitely a lot of good points there. Soul being your biggest surprise here. Pesto, your retort. What is your biggest surprise in Season 1?
As much as I want to use this opportunity to once again wallow in the failure of my hometown Misfits, what I am going to go with instead is, shit, this thing worked. I mean, I think if you look back, there was a lot of uncertainty. Now we've got 100,000 people coming in consistently, but there was a lot of negativity. There were a lot of doubters. There were prominent voices in the industry pointing out all of the parallels between the Overwatch League and other things in the past that did collapse and that did a lot of damage to esports as a broader community. And I think that the Overwatch League has been successful and probably more successful than anyone thought about. And if you look at that, I mean, sure, Blizzard is going to say, whatever happens, Blizzard is going to say, yes, this is successful. But if you look at it, they added additional sponsors after the league started. They added additional personnel. I don't think the league started. I'm not sure, but they added additional personnel after the league. So clearly they thought that they were in a good financial position, that this was steady enough that they were going to invest more in it than they initially planned. So I think that the biggest surprise is just how well this season did, and I'm really excited to see what we can do in Season 2.
Man, both of those are really, really good. You, A. Smith and Volmo, you guys have a tough one here, but we'll start with you, A. Smith. Are you picking Pesto in the Overwatch League as a whole doing so well, or are you picking Monkey Prince here with the Soul Dynasty being the biggest surprise?
Okay. First off, the correct answer was Shanghai sucking as bad as they did. Did anybody expect 0-40?
Nope,
No one did.
For the record, that's not the correct choice.
Okay, whatever. All right. Anyways.
Only I always have an automatic, the other person doesn't even get to pick win, and neither of you picked it.
Well, I would have tried to override you. However,
good luck.
However, I think they were both really good. I think I'm gonna lean towards Pesto on this. I do think the league overall shocked me more of how well we did at projecting viewership. I think the viewership shocked me the most,
Makes
even
sense.
more than Soul sucking.
Volmil, are you declaring Pesto the winner here, or am I gonna have to make the choice?
You know, I don't know that we're necessarily out of the ballpark yet with the Overwatch League. I think there's been a lot of surprising things. I think they've fetched a lot of sponsorship, which has been a very nice thing that they've done. It is kind of surprising when you look at other esports kind of long-lasting leagues, but when you make a super team, you kind of expect them to do halfway decent, and Soul kind of really let a lot of people down in my book, because I'm a little bit of a Soul fan, so I gotta say, Soul kind of sucking is quite surprising.
Yeah, man. So it's the tie. It's coming. The ball is back in my court, and I would like to say that for the record, Bare Hands in the chat saying Jonak being MVP was the correct answer. That would have automatically gotten you the win. So that goes without saying. Neither of you picked it. Man, this is a really close one. On the one hand, man, every single it was like Soul was overwhelmingly the top choice in the power ranking across the community. They ended up being number one with London Soul definitely 1-2. I don't think anyone put them below 3 or put them below 2. That's super surprising. But I think I'm gonna have to go with Pesto on this one at the grander scale here. It being Overwatch League. I came from the days when the Overwatch, the Gosu Gamers daily weeklies were getting, a dozen viewers a week.
He's getting props.
Oh God, he's getting props. Or probably running to the bathroom or something. I don't know. But I got to go with that. They were both very, very good answers. And yeah, so Pesto, officially, you are the winner here. The floor is yours now that you have returned from running back. Let me give you your victory song here.
You've captured the objective. Well done.
So,
the floor is yours
thank
to
you
sell
very
out.
much. Thank you very much. It's been really fun. In lieu of a speech, I am going to take this jar of pesto and eat it with a spoon.
Oh, man. I really hope that's not the same jar you had for the first time you were on here, because that's been months. It's just been sitting out on his
more in
counter.
the fridge.
Well, everyone, that is going to be it. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Man, that was. It's always nice having the expert. This is like the expert league, the expert leagues here. on Around the Payload. But that's going to be it, guys. We will see you in 2 weeks, which will be after the stage playoffs. So it's going to be an interesting one to talk about the whole season and recap, but we'll definitely be talking about that. So for Pesto, for A. Smith, for the Monkey Prince, for Volamil, I am the Blevins. And remember, guys, we will see you next week around the Payload. Bye-bye.